Welcome into another video. This time we're going over all of our first round in the NFL draft, all these fantasy targets that you might want to be looking at for your fantasy teams. We have a huge video to get into, so make sure you hit a thumbs up, and we're going to go right into this, talking about Caleb Williams, who was the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft to the Chicago Bears. Completely going to be revamping this entire Bears team, right? Justin Fields now on the mend. He's gone over there with the Steelers. This is Caleb Williams' team. He's a highly touted quarterback out of the college football, can sling the ball all over the field, kind of like a Patrick Mahomes-like type of quarterback, is at least what everybody comparing him to. I don't think he's quite to the level of Patrick Mahomes right now, but he's got a lot of tools that we can look at, right? So it's one of those things. Let's look at what he did last year at USC. He ended up with 3,633 yards, 30 touchdowns, alongside 115 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns on top of that. Caleb Williams has all the tools to be successful in the NFL. It's up to the Bears to be able to develop this guy. They're already surrounding him with tons of weapons. We're talking about DeAndre Swift out of the backfield, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and they even drafted Rome Odunze, somebody we're going to be talking about here in just a little bit. There's weapons all over the field. The success pattern for Caleb Williams, if he's not successful in this type of atmosphere around him, it's more about Caleb Williams and less of what the team's going almost all in. I mean, they're drafting another highly touted wide receiver out of Washington and Rome Odunze. They brought in a free agency that said, hey, come on, Keenan Allen, come on over here. They retained DJ Moore for right now. I mean, I'm telling you, there's weapons all over the field, and I think Caleb Williams can be set up for success. So definitely, if you are in a redraft league or even a dynasty league, anything like that, Caleb Williams could be a fantasy asset as early as this season, because he's going to be just thrown into the fire to see what he can do. Let's just look at the depth chart real quick and see exactly what we're looking about here. We have Caleb Williams already slotted into that first the first slot right there. You know, Tyson Badgett, he's not going to be comparing at all to Caleb Williams, so it's easily his team. Khalil Herbert goes to the second running back slot here with DeAndre Swift coming in free agency. We definitely have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze as the top 3 wide receivers, and also with Cole Kmet on top of that. Like, this is going to be one of those guys is almost, they're calling it a can't miss prospect. He's actually my #2 quarterback on the board. I actually like the guy who was drafted next. A little bit better than Caleb Williams. It's just, I think that Caleb Williams makes a little bit too many throws that I do not like. He just has so much moxie. He thinks he can throw the ball all over the field, and it really doesn't matter what he's doing. He just thinks he can make all the throws. It kind of scares me just a little bit. Let's move right along here to the next team. We have the Washington Commanders going in there. They're selecting Jaden Daniels, the quarterback out of LSU. Another guy that I really do enjoy watching play. The dude's absolutely electric. Just saying, I think a little bit better passer of a Lamar Jackson type prototype guy. This dude was going absolutely bananas last season. I mean, he's got such a high fantasy football floor because of his rushing ability alone. Let's just look at what he did at LSU. We see that Jaden Daniels ended up with 3,812 yards passing, with 40 passing touchdowns alongside 1,134 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns on top of that. As you see, that when you want to have a fantasy floor, especially at the quarterback position, Jaden Daniels can give you that each and every single week. Even if he doesn't throw you for 250 passing yards, he can still get you close to 100 yards rushing and even a touchdown or 2 on the ground, which makes him a very valuable fantasy football asset. I can't wait to see what he does in this Washington offense. Let's just take a little blanket stare at the Washington Commanders offense and see what we can see what's going around Jaden Daniels. As you see the depth chart right here, Jaden Daniels, I have him slotted in over Marcus Mariota as the starting quarterback. We've got Austin Eckler coming over in free agency to pair up with Brian Robinson Jr. at the running back position. Wide receivers, they can be doing a little bit better with that, but Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, I really do like. Luke McCaffrey, not as high on, but I think he's a competent wide receiver. Got to put him at the #3 spot. They got Zach Ertz in here at the tight end position from free agency, and then they ended up also drafting Ben Sinnott, which is another tight end that I really do like in this offense. I think he can really become something. I think as the season goes on, we're going to see Ben Sinnott get a little bit more opportunities, and I think that Jaden Daniels should be able to connect with him as a safety blanket early and often. Pretty excited about what I see with that. So let's move right along to the third pick here. We're going with the New England Patriots. My 2 target would be Drake May, that quarterback out of UNC. They're pretty much revamping Mac Jones, sayonara. Sent him over there to the Jacksonville Jaguars as a backup with Trevor Lawrence. Now it's going to be Drake May's show. There's nobody over there. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, They kind of brought him in. They're like, is it going to be Drake May? Is it going to be Jacoby Brissett? I think they're going to give the whole tools over there to Drake May and say, hey, go make something happen. Let's just look at what he did last season. We look and see he did 3,608 yards passing, along with 24 passing touchdowns, riding around with 449 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns on top of that. Drake May, a lot of times, Drake May was slotted as the #1 quarterback in this over Jaden Daniels and over Caleb Williams. It's kind of like, what is your cup of tea, right? So they all give you something a little bit different. You got, Caleb Williams, who's uber talented, makes a lot of risky plays. You got Jaden Daniels, who's really good on the ground, but can also pass the ball. And you got Drake May, who's a little bit of everything. He's like an all-around type of quarterback. So whatever flavor that you have, they surrounded Drake May with some more weapons, some more tools. Ramondre Stevenson should be the running back in that field. Let's just go over the depth chart real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. As we see Drake May right here, I have him slotting as a #1 quarterback over Jacoby Brissett. Ramondre Stevenson, what I just mentioned a minute ago, Antonio Gibson, they got over from the Commanders in the free agency. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, 2 wide receivers that they ended up drafting. Polk out of Washington, Javon Baker out of UCF. They got Kendrick Bourne and Demario Douglas back from last year, and they also have Hunter Henry as well. So there's some passing catching options. Let's see if the defense can kind of come up to speed, see what happens. The New England Patriots need a new identity. Ever since Tom Brady left, they've been kind of in cock-a-doodle. Now they want to see, okay, what can we do to kind of ascend ourselves? Because as the Patriots way it goes, we're used to being on the top, and we haven't been on the top since Tom Brady left. Let's see what happens with these guys. So the Arizona Cardinals, what's the next guy? And that's what I want to put on here. Marvin Harrison Jr., probably the best wide receiver in this draft class. Maybe not even this draft class, maybe even the last few draft classes. Marvin Harrison Jr. could be at the top of the list. The dude is absolutely phenomenal. The things that I saw him on the field doing spectacular catches can really provide a boost for this Cardinals offense and Kyler Murray. Let's just look at what Marvin Harrison Jr. did last season. Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'4", 205 pounds, had 67 receptions, 1,211 yards, and 14 touchdowns on top of that. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that prototypical type of wide receiver that you're looking for in fantasy football. We're talking about the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases, the CeeDee Lambs, the Amon-Ra St. Browns, the A.J. Browns. This type of quality is what Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be. And let's not forget what his dad did with Peyton Manning in the Indianapolis Colts. So he's got the pedigree, he's got the bloodline, he's got the talent. He just has to put it all together with Kyler Murray and this offense. So let's just look at the Cardinals offense, see what they have with Marvin Harrison Jr. as a part of it. As we see, Kyler Murray as the quarterback there, James Conner, Trey Benson, a running back that I really did like out of the University of Florida State. University of Florida State, doesn't even make sense. Florida State University. Trey Benson, I think he's a phenomenal pick. Marvin Harrison Jr. skyrocketing as the #1 wide receiver here. Nobody even close. Michael Wilson drops to the #2. Greg Dortch definitely in the slot. And then they end up getting Trey McBride as their normal tight end. And then Tip was over there. He's going to be more of a blocking type tight end, not really that pass catching. So really not a risk to Trey McBride at all. But Marvin Harrison Jr. should be the bona fide guy. He should be the man going forward between him and Trey McBride. I think Kyler Murray's going to give these guys all they can possibly handle. I think it's going to be absolutely fun to watch this offense. Marvin Harrison Jr., get him on your team. So the next guy we're going to be talking about here is from the Giants here. It's going to be Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver out of LSU, ended up going over there with the Giants and Daniel Jones. I think this could be a match made in heaven. They needed a wide receiver. Daniel Jones needs to prove himself. He could force feed the ball to Malik Neighbors early and often. Could be putting up quite a bit of fireworks week in and week out for your team. Let's look at what he did last year at LSU. He ended up with a 6 foot, 200 pound, had 86 receptions, 1,546 yards, and 14 touchdowns on top of that. He was leading that LSU offense, right? Jaden Daniels had him and Brian Thomas Jr. They were slinging the ball all over the field. Malik Neighbors made a lot of plays, and that's what the Giants need. They need a playmaker. They've been drafting all of these guys, Wando Robinsons and just all of these guys to try to make some kind of, hey, it hasn't happened so far. I think Malik Neighbors is that dude. I think that was a perfect pick. If you get him in your rookie drafts, I think you won't be disappointed. Let's just look at the depth chart for the Giants to see what he has going around him. We have at the quarterback there, Daniel Jones. Devin Single, they brought over here in free agency. I like the rookie Tyrone Tracy that they did draft as well. Malik Neighbors vaults all the way up to the #1 wide receiver spot here. Jalen Hyatt, Wandell Robinson, Darius Slayton. They got some little pieces there, just not phenomenal. I think Malik Neighbors can be phenomenal. And then we ended up with Darren Waller. Is he going to end up retiring? We don't really know. But as of right now, Darren Waller is on the roster. I think this roster, I don't know necessarily can compete, but I think as far as the fantasy football world goes, I think there's some fantasy points to be had in this offense. I think Malik Neighbors can definitely give you that. So the next guy, we're going to move it right along here. It's going to be from the Atlanta Falcons. Surprising pick here, but Michael Penix Jr. Right after they ended up signing over a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, and now they end up with Malik Neighbors and Michael Penix as the backup quarterback right there. So we're just gonna have to see what happens with that situation. I don't think that, you know, they gave over $100 million for Kirk Cousins to be a phenomenal asset of that team, and now all of a sudden they drafted Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick in the draft. I don't really understand that situation, but it's one of those things that, hey, you never know what happens. Maybe in about 3 or 4 years, right before he ends up having to sign his 5th-year contract, does Michael Penix finally get the opportunity? And we know we had Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles injury right now. Could be kind of suspicious. We don't know what's happening, but just look at what Michael Penix Jr. did last year with the Washington Huskies. So he ended up 6'3", 213-pound quarterback, had 4,903 passing yards along 36 passing touchdowns with 8 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on top of that. Again, if you're drafting him in a rookie draft, you're really not going to get any type of production out of him early, right? Kirk Cousins is the man, signed a massive contract for a quarterback. Don't really know what the Falcons are doing at this point, so if you take a risk on him, you're probably getting him late 3rd or something like that. If you're in a super flex league, he's probably into the 1st, early 2nd round pick. He's just too risky, right? Too risky for my shoes. But let's just look at the depth chart, kind of what we're talking about, and see where Michael Penix kind of lands. As you hear, like, Kirk Cousins is bona fide the #1 quarterback. Michael Penix has 0 chance to start, barring injury. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Rondo Moore. They've got some nice weapons. Excuse me. And Kyle Pitts at the tight end position as well. So it's one of those things that it's looking really good for a lot of the offense, a lot of the young pieces, just not Michael Penix Jr., somebody you may not want to go out there and try to risk the biscuit for. So the next guy we're going to talk about here is, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the video with the Chicago Bears drafting Rome Odunze. So this is another weapon, right? He could be coming in, who knows? DJ Moore and Keenan Allen could be just the one-year wonders here, and they could be both gone, and then Rome Odunze could now be the #1 wide receiver on this fantasy football team. And I would not be surprised if that happened. I think Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze together, building rapport as rookies together, moving into their whole careers. This could be really, really good. So if you have a nice pick with Rome Odunze, might not be a too shabby of a pick. So let's look at what he did last season. Rome Odunze ended up with 92 receptions for 1,640 yards and 13 touchdowns on top of that. Something that, you know, I kind of like this pick. I was hoping they didn't want to go defense. I'm hoping they're going to show, you know, Caleb Williams, hey, look, we're going to build around you. We are going to make this your team, and the way to do that is you put so many offensive weapons around this guy that he has no option but to succeed, and Rome Odunze could be the benefactor of that. Let's go ahead and glance at the Bears depth chart one more time. As you see, we talked about a little earlier with Caleb Williams up there. Rome Odunze definitely had him slotted in that 3rd slot, but again, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen might end up moving on after the season, or at least one of them may. And Rome Odunze steps up in the pecking order. I really, really like that. So moving right along to the next pick, we're going over with the Vikings here. We're talking about J.J. McCarthy. I think was pretty much a steal at this point. They were thought about moving up in the draft to grab J.J. McCarthy, but they ended up staying put, and they ended up having their guy fall to them. There's really nobody else here ready to do any type of damage to him. We're not worried about Sam Darnold at this point, right? I think J.J. McCarthy is going to get the football earlier rather than later. I don't think he starts the season as the guy. I think he ends up coming in after, maybe if they have a struggle or anything, like 0-4, 1-3 type of season, they're going to probably plug in J.J. McCarthy. So let's look at what he did last year for with the Michigan Wolverines. He's a 6'3" quarterback, 202 pounds, 2,991 yards passing with 22 touchdowns on top of that. He had 202 rushing yards along 3 rushing touchdowns. And we have to keep in mind, the Michigan Wolverines were not a pass-happy type of offense. They had a strong defense and a very good running back with Blake Corum there. They didn't need McCarthy to do anything special to kind of break out, right? So I think overall, J.J. McCarthy is a good fit. I think Justin Jefferson's going to be happy with this situation. I think he's going to stay put as well. They end up getting Aaron Jones over there at the running back position. I think it could be quite nice. Let's look at the depth chart real quick to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Like I said, Sam Darnold, I have him right now slated as the #1 quarterback on top of everybody else, but you know, I think J.J. McCarthy's going to end up getting that backfield sooner rather than later. Aaron Jones coming over from the Green Bay Packers as the running back there. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkins. Some great weapons for him to throw the football to. Really excited. And JJ McCarthy, again, he's kind of the same situation as Caleb Williams. If he doesn't succeed in this offense, who can he succeed with? He's got tons of weapons. I think he could be a sneaky pick for you. If he ends up slipping a little bit later into the first round of your rookie drafts, go ahead and grab JJ McCarthy. I think you'd be happy that you did. Another quarterback falling into someone's lap. We're talking about the Denver Broncos. We're talking about Bo Nix, somebody who could be a perfect fit for this Sean Payton type of offense. We're talking about maybe like a Drew Brees type of quarterback. This guy's got the smarts. He's a little bit older. He stayed in college football longer than what most did. 24-year-old quarterback. and I think he can process some things fast enough for Sean Payton to be successful in this offense. Let's look at what he did last year at Oregon. 4,508 yards passing, 45 touchdowns alongside 234 rushing yards with 6 rushing touchdowns on top of that. And what did they do with Bo Nix, right? So they lost some, Jerry Jeudy in there. They kept Courtland Sutton, and they went and got the guy Troy Franklin out of Oregon. They got his guy that he's used to meshing with. I'm excited to see what he can do into this offense. Let's switch over and look at the depth chart real quick, kind of see what we have going on here. As you see, Bo Nix, I have him slotted in easily ahead of Zach Wilson in the depth chart. I think there's no competition right there. Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, 3 running backs that I do like, and they ended up getting that running back out of Notre Dame, Audric Estime. Like I said earlier, Courtland Sutton. I have Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds, and Tim Patrick ahead of him right now, but I think Troy Franklin will slowly start to trickle his way up into the top 2 of wide receivers, and we definitely have Greg Dulcich at the tight end above that. So Bo Nix, he's got the tools. They got the tools to be successful. He's got the coaching to be successful, and he's got some weapons to be successful. So I'm curious to see what Bo Nix does. Again, somebody you could probably get in the second round of your rookie drafts. I'm excited to see what he can do, right? So if you have an open spot and you need a quarterback, and you may have taken something maybe like a Marvin Harrison or a Malik Neighbors earlier in your draft, and now it's in the second round, grab Bo Nix if you need something like that. I think he can definitely help you out. Another surprise for you right here will be the next pick, will be the Raiders taking Brock Bowers. He's probably the best tight end prospect to come out in many, many, many years. I mean, he was always contested as the baby Gronk of the NFL right now, but we'll have to see what happens. He goes to an offense with not best, great quarterback play. We're talking about like Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. So will he be able to adapt with poor quarterback play? We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But let's just look at what he did last year at Georgia. We're looking at Brock Bowers, 6'4" tight end, 56 receptions, 713 yards alongside 6 touchdowns. Brock Bowers, a lot of people are high on this guy, including myself. I don't like the situation he is in fantasy football, so he's probably dropping just a little bit in rookie drafts, but somebody you still want to go out there and get, somebody you may be able to target. He could be a generational talent as well. We'll have to wait and see. Let's just look at this Raiders offense with Brock Bowers plugged into that. Like I talked earlier, it was a Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell at the quarterback position. Zamir White, Alexander Madison at the running back position. You got your wide receivers, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Meyer, Trey Tucker, Michael Gallup. They just got over here from the Cowboys in free agency. And then we have Brock Bowers taking over that role from Michael Mayer. I had Michael Mayer as a sleeper early on in this process. Brock Bowers kind of knocking him down just a little bit from that. But I think Brock Bowers overall could be a decent play for you. So next guy, I'm super high on. I just don't like the landing spot, and the Jacksonville Jaguars took Brian Thomas Jr., the other wide receiver out of LSU. He was dominant at LSU, and he would have had even more tout coming out if it wasn't Malik Neighbors being there. The dude led the LSU Tigers with 17 passing touchdowns. He was awesome, right? He was right there with yards per catch with Malik Neighbors, just maybe like 0.2, 0.3 under him. So we don't sleep on Brian Thomas Jr. He could be the #1 wide receiver for this offense sooner rather than later. Let's look at what he did at LSU. Brian Thomas Jr., 6'4" wide receiver, 60 receptions, 1,079 yards, and 15 touchdowns. Like I said, he could be the #1 guy. He's got the body, he's got the size, he's got the speed, and he has the ability to dominate in the NFL and could be great for your fantasy football team. Somebody that, because of these Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze going early, he's fallen a little bit in these drafts and somebody you can really take. And at the end of the day, Brian Thomas Jr. can end up being in one of the top 2, top 3 type of wide receivers in this entire draft class. I love this guy and what he brings to the table. Let's look at the Jaguars offense with Brian Thomas Jr. plugged into it. We have Trevor Lawrence at that quarterback position, Travis Etienne, Dearness Johnson at the running back position, Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis I have right now currently slotted ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. and Evan Ingram at that tight end position. So overall, I do love Brian Thomas Jr. I just don't like the landing spot for Brian Thomas Jr., but I think he can still find success with Trevor Lawrence. We're going to the next guy here. We're talking about Xavier Worthy, the guy who shocked the world with a 4.22 40 at the 40-yard at the combine at the 40-yard dash. So I knew he was going to get drafted a little bit earlier, and I didn't know. I actually had a mock going to the Chiefs at the 32nd pick in the draft. The Chiefs ended up trading up for Xavier Worthy. So are they kind of trying to find their Tyreek Hill type of play? We don't know, but he's got the speed to be the Tyreek Hill. I believe he's even faster than Tyreek Hill. He just needs to get a little bit more frame, a little bit more bulk about him, but he's an absolute nightmare in the open field. He can make some moves to get open. I really like his opportunity. As long as Patrick Mahomes can get him the football, we could be looking at a Tyreek Holmes Tyreek Hill type of play with Patrick Mahomes. So let's just look at what Xavier Worthy did last year with the Texas Longhorns. Xavier Worthy, a 6'1" wide receiver, 75 receptions, 1,014 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns on top of that. Like I said, Rashee Rice battling some problems right now with the police. Will he be suspended? Will he miss the entire year? Then they get Marquise Brown over there out of free agency. Xavier Worthy could have a huge role as a rookie. Let's just look at the depth chart and see what I'm talking about here. Patrick Mahomes clearly at the #1 quarterback position. Isaiah Pacheco at that running back position. Rashee Rice could be gone, so it could be Marquise Brown as the #1 wide receiver, and it could be somebody like Xavier Worthy as the #2 wide receiver, passing up people like Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and Justin Watson. And we can't forget about Travis Kelce, the good guy who just has signed a 2-year contract with those guys to continue on. So you never know. Could be a lot more dominance headed, and Xavier Worthy could be the reason why they do so. Let's go over the last person we're talking about here today. We're talking about Xavier Legette, the guy that everybody's talking about just because of the way he talks, but I'm going to talk about the way that he plays with the Carolina Panthers. They need a #1 wide receiver. Yes, they got Deontay Johnson over there. Is he really the #1 guy? Maybe a little bit smaller. Xavier Legette could take over that #1 role sooner rather than later. Let's look at what he did last season at the University of South Carolina. Xavier Legette, 6'3", 227-pound wide receiver, 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, and 7 touchdowns on top of that. A lot of people are kind of worried. He only broke out his very last season of being in college football. Didn't really do much before that, but I think that he has the skills and the skill set to be a solid fantasy football player for your team. I think he's given the opportunity. Bryce Young needs to force feed him just like he force fed Adam Thielen last year. So can't wait to see we do that. Let's look at the depth chart of what the Panthers have right now. We have Bryce Young obviously at that quarterback position. They drafted Jonathan Brooks in the draft, which I really like. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo, the first-round wide receiver that they just took last season. And then they took Jatavian Sanders is another person that I do like at the tight end position. The other guy out of Texas as well. I think he can be phenomenal. But look, these are all these targets, all the first round targets that I want to talk about. We're coming out with targets each and every round that you can end up getting. But guys, make sure you're hitting the like button. I really appreciate it. And hit the subscribe button. We're moving right along to 1,000 subscribers. Leave a comment down below. Which of these targets are you most excited to draft in your NFL drafts or your fantasy football drafts? So can't wait to see you guys on the next video. We'll see you guys next time.